going back to what you were before.
I'm not gonna be a superhero.
This is your life now.
Who the hell are you?
I'm Daredevil.
Just want to make sure that you don't think this is one of those cameo every week type of shows. Well, except Bruce. And Blonsky. Whoa! Change back now! And me! All right, calm down. And Wong.
Call my lawyer.
What's up, everybody? It's Josh. We need to talk about She-Hulk. Episode 1 comes out later today / early tomorrow, depending on what time you are watching this. And I want to kind of just give my thoughts on what is being said about the show so far and properly set expectations for you guys. By the way, I will be doing a live watch party for every episode of She-Hulk, and that'll be at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time in the morning, very early Thursday morning. We'll chill for a little bit, watch the episode together, and then we'll talk about it. I will also be doing full spoiler breakdowns later that morning at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. But let's get into it. Let's talk about She-Hulk. A lot has been said about She-Hulk as we have moved towards it from behind the scenes. This was announced right alongside Miss Marvel and Moon Knight, two shows that I thought were pretty good for the MCU, and there are a lot of questions about She-Hulk itself. And I personally feel like, from what I've seen from marketing, She-Hulk could possibly be the best show of that bunch. I know a lot of people really like Moon Knight, and certain episodes of Moon Knight I thought were fantastic, but it kind of left me unfulfilled and leaves off on this massive cliffhanger that we're not sure whether or not they'll answer. And just from the perspective of being very MCU, Moon Knight fell short for me. I mean, it's a fun show, but it has like very little connective tissue to the wider MCU. And She-Hulk, to me, has always seemed like a show that was going to be very, very Marvel Studios. I mean, you've got a ton of different cameos. You have literally the main character representing Abomination in a court of law, and perhaps even working for this new superhero defense part of the government. And so we're going to get a lot of perspective and fill in for the MCU from She-Hulk. And in an example of just how Marvel Studios this show is going to be, it is said that every single episode of She-Hulk will have a post-credit scene. That's pretty wild. I mean, we've seen post-credit scenes before in Marvel Studios Disney Plus shows, but we've never actually seen a post-credit scene for every single episode. Now, the runtime for each episode is probably going to be around that half-hour mark. I believe the first episode is that, but I think all of them, generally speaking, are going to be about a half hour, because we're really sort of following this, court TV show kind of model, that half-hour slot that you see a lot of these other shows use or have used in the past. We know that characters like Wong and Bruce Banner and Daredevil are going to be in the show. I wouldn't hold out hope for Daredevil early on in the show, though. The word is that that will be happening later on in the show, but we can also expect all kinds of fun, goofy Marvel characters, different powered people. I mean, Titania is kind of a wild character. She's going to play a pretty significant role. We've heard that Frogman's going to be in here. I generally think we're just going to get a ton of really, really fun characters. Now, the show seems to be taking a lot of inspiration from the John Byrne run of She-Hulk, which did sort of mature the character. She embraced her own sexuality, somewhat of a feminine icon, but it's also a really funny run. And I think a lot of the flavor of She-Hulk's comic book history, with her breaking the fourth wall and making really funny jokes, is going to be in the DNA of this show. And I also think this show is going to be really Marvel in the way that She-Hulk is likely to play a big role in the future of the MCU. Like, Mark Ruffalo has been doing interviews talking about this, and he said that from what he understands, there won't be another Avengers movie without She-Hulk. And so some of the plot here is Jennifer Walters getting these abilities, but not actually wanting to be a superhero. She just wants to be a low-key lawyer, somewhat of a reluctant hero, and that is going to end with her embracing that, probably pretty likely, because if she's going to be an Avenger, she's going to have to step up and be an Avenger. And so, yeah, a lot of positive stuff there. Now, what to exactly expect from the first episode, right? Well, this is where it gets kind of interesting, because a lot of people have mixed responses to the first episode of She-Hulk. In fact, I'm going to bring up this tweet here by Joshua Ryan, Mr. Movie Guy, and he says that his viewing experience with She-Hulk went like this. Episode 1, I'm not on board. Episode 2, I'm coming around. Episode 3, okay, I love it. episode 4, is this my favorite MCU show? He goes on to say that the first episode is mostly filler, but once you settle into the tone, it's such a fun watch. And I find that interesting, and I also was like kind of weirded out when Paul from Heavy Spoilers said that episode 1 was one of his least favorite MCU shows. Now, that kind of freaked me out because Paul and I usually share the same opinion about a lot of different MCU movies and shows, right? Our tastes are pretty similar, despite him being a Brit. Because I can't imagine with the food they have over there that they develop good taste. You know what it is. Let's keep going. The point is, I'm trying to curb my personal expectations for episode 1 and realizing that there seems to be a pattern of people saying that the show really picks up its pace in the next few episodes and it's a really, really fun show. But even the filler like exposition aspect of the show might be fine with me personally because, as I was mentioning before, filling in where the MCU is at, the status quo, and what is going on, well, that's kind of stuff that I really love. That was stuff that was missing from a lot of Marvel shows, something that I've been super curious about. So it's possible that despite the show maybe not coming with a big bang in the first episode, if it does the right things for me personally, filling us in on what's going on in the world and establishing a tone with Jennifer Walters, I might be frankly completely on board and really, really love it. And you might too. But I'm also trying to set my expectations in such a way that if I don't love the first episode, I'm not crushed and I'm not going to be down on the show's future because I will realize that there seems to be this pattern where it kind of picks up the pace as it goes. And I'm going to be honest here, guys, I have actually not loved most of the MCU Disney Plus shows. Loki's my favorite. I did like WandaVision, and there are aspects of every single show that I enjoyed, but I didn't feel like any of the shows properly struck the perfect MCU tone, or if they're not going to do the MCU tone, I'd really prefer the show go all out and stand on its own as something of a really good television series, like something like the first season of Westworld, something like Raised by Wolves, like Breaking Bad back in the day. I just want something either really legendary good or something really MCU, and I don't feel like any of the shows have completely nailed that, maybe other than Loki, which really leaned in to the MCU of it all. And so my hope and expectation with She-Hulk is that it's this really fun ride that celebrates the MCU, has things that are significant that we can think about for later, like perhaps even the son of Hulk and some stuff that will lead into a World War Hulk or something like that. But I'm really not expecting the show to be groundbreaking, right? This isn't like WandaVision where it's trying to do this crazy thing and establish itself as a serious piece of television history. No, like I think She-Hulk's just going to be a fun periodical model which has a really fun star, has a really great cast, celebrates the MCU, is bombastic and fun, and that's what I'm expecting. It's what I hope we get, and when this whole show is said and done, it's completely possible that She-Hulk would be my favorite MCU show. But those are my thoughts and ideas about setting expectations and what to expect in She-Hulk episode 1 and in She-Hulk overall. Have you heard anything different? What are your thoughts about She-Hulk? Let me know in the comment section below.